this computer. All right, so now we're recording. Now we've got the PowerPoint going. And what we're going to talk about today is the importance of play. I thought it would be important to go through this topic because I'd say one of the questions I've been presented with most over the last year and a half is how are our kids ever going to catch up? How are they going to make up for lost school time, for lost time with their friends? And one of the most important things that we all need to be carrying around with us is the realization that kids are incredibly resilient. And if you get them out and get them involved in a lot of creative play, they are going to be just fine. And a few different sayings that relate to this. Play is often talked about as if it were a relief from serious learning. But for children, play is serious learning. Play is the work of childhood. Fred Rogers, as Maureen mentioned, that piece of play is the work of childhood also comes to us from Maria Montessori. And then I love this saying from George Bernard Shaw, we don't stop playing because we grow old. We grow old because we stop playing. And so it's critical that we never let our children back away from that. And one of the best things we can do as the adults in our children's lives is to be reinforcing play as being an important part of every single day of their lives. And by doing so, by modeling it for our kids. If you remember our last presentation, we talked about how it truly matters less what you say to your kids for them to learn from you. It's what you do. And if you are out there saying to your kids, okay, go out and play, but you yourself never take time to play, you yourself never take time to put down your iPhone or get off of your computer and answering emails, if you don't ever demonstrate and model play on a day-to-day basis, your kids are not going to pick that up from you. And so it's critical that you model that because it's an important way to keep ourselves from growing old, and it's important for our kids to be able to model that and be able to learn from that. So 3 points in our agenda this morning, relatively simple. We're going to talk about the role of play in child development. We'll talk about how you as an adult, when you're playing with your children, how you can maximize the benefits of play, and also some ideas for some fun activities around the home. Okay, so hopefully that covers some pieces that you would be looking for. This goes back to what I was starting out talking about. So many times parents have been fretting about what's going to happen to this generation of kids that had this year-plus disruption in typical peer activities, this year-plus disruption in terms of the way that school was presented. One thing I can tell you from spending time on the campus at the children's school over the past year is your children have not had any disruption in their learning skills or their play skills. The joy on the kids' faces when you spend time there watching them both out on the playground, working in the sandbox, building with blocks, learning by putting shapes together, learning in more traditional fashions. Your kids have had a really incredible opportunity this year to continue their brain development, to continue their social development. And even though there have been disruptions by having moments of times where kids have been quarantined because of possible, their pod having an exposure, or walking around with a mask and their teachers having masks on and all these different pieces. The beauty of kids is that they learn to work around it. We could learn so much from our kids in terms of learning that flexibility. And even though they may have had less access to their peers and extended family and different activities outside of school, and even though you guys as parents have been shouldering an incredible burden to keep your kids entertained, I can tell you from what I've seen over this current year is our kids are right on track. Their learning is right on track. Their social skills are right on track. And they've gotten so much out of this really interesting and novel year. And I really think that as we move into the summer, they're in a great shape to continue that development. And this reflects that. The really good news is that kids are adaptive and they learn to fill these COVID gaps through various different learning activities, relationship building, coping skills, very often just by getting out and playing, being on swing sets and running around a yard and building something in the sandbox. All of these are great ways that they're learning all of these great skills. So why is play important? And I turn to Dr. Landreth, who developed the Center for Play Therapy. He has spent his whole career studying play, studying the impact of play on brain development. And what he has determined through so many different research studies is that the toys and the activities that kids gravitate towards naturally really are very similar to what in adolescents and adults we use as words. And so very often we notice through kids that they're expressing so much through the dolls that they pick up or the way that they build a structure. And what he has conveyed in his research is that the toys that they choose and the activities that they move into are really like the words that they are using, and play is their language. And this is something that Jean Piaget, one of the greatest developmental theorists of our time and back through the last 100 years, he studied children and all the different stages that they go through. And he noticed the different types of play that they use at different stages. And prior to the age 11, children are not able to think in a broadly abstract way. They think in a much more concrete way, and they use materials to be able to express the way that they are understanding things and to express what they need from the adults in their world and their peers. And they don't express it by sitting down and saying, hey, I'm worried, or hey, I need something to drink, or something like that. They very often express it through the activities that they choose. And so the greater we are able to give them opportunities for open-ended play, that is their way of expressing their thoughts, and that is their way of expressing their feelings at a less verbal level. And it's through play that children's experiences and feelings don't get bottled up, but actually then get expressed, and they develop the social language to be able to demonstrate their understanding of interactions and give and take and all of those different pieces. And so all of these different functions of play are what researchers have discovered over the last 50 years in studying play. Is we've seen that there is brain development in the emotional centers of the brain development in the frontal lobes of the brain, which are the planning parts of the brain, and that access to higher order learning. All of those different centers of the brain are stimulated and grow most effectively through play. It's not sitting down and doing worksheets. It's not memorizing their times tables. It's not learning letters of the alphabet. Of course, we need to give them all of those learning opportunities, but it's through play that they experience a range of emotions. They experience that understanding of connection to their peers. It's their way of reducing stress. It's how they gain mastery over their world, a feeling of control over their world, which helps to improve their self-esteem. It fosters creativity. It helps them build those fine motor skills and gross motor skills and problem-solving skills. And it allows them to role play, which is what is the foundation for broader interpersonal relationships. That's how they learn how to connect not just to their peers, but to adults. It's how they learn how to take on different roles. It's how they learn their self-identity. So all of these are different things that they do through role-playing activities, building activities, and it helps them to process emotions. So various different types of play. What I'm going to do is I'm going to connect it into two different primary areas of play. There are zillions of ways that we could characterize and describe different types of play, but I'm going to break it into two primary categories. One being academic play, and then the other being child-directed play. And academic play are all of the different ways that kids intersect with materials and intersect with different learning opportunities, but in a more play-based fashion. And this is very much when you look at the quote curriculum of a place like the children's school. This is why when you walk into their learning environment, there are so many different colors that you see and so many different objects that they can intersect with in different areas designated for art and different areas designated for other tactile experiences, different areas where they sit and talk with their peers, and different audiovisual opportunities and music opportunities, all these different opportunities for intersecting with different types of colors, numbers, shapes, sizes, symbols, letters, positions, blah, 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 blah. All this different stuff is what goes into building their foundation for learning that different objects that you intersect with do start to convey different meaning. And so these little squiggly lines start to take on a meaning of letters, and those letters have sounds associated with them, and those sounds connect to words, and those words start to connect to sentences. All of that starts in the intersection with all of these different spatial reasoning opportunities, all of these different abilities to identify shapes, all of these different abilities to identify colors. All of that underlies math skills by being able to separate out in terms of sequence of smallest to largest, or to group things by various different categories. All of these are the foundation skills that go into the brain development to develop what your later sixth grader and eighth grader and 12th grader is going to be learning based in English, writing, math, all of these different academic skills. It all starts with these earlier opportunities to intersect with these various different objects and various different experiences within their academic environment. And the role of the adult in those situations is to praise hard work, not to praise specific, not to praise, oh, you got an A, isn't that wonderful? Or, oh, you got a big star and stuff like that, but to actually praise the effort level. What research shows is that kids interpret adults' language and the way that they intersect with what the child is doing based on what the specific focus of the adult is. And so if the adult is focusing on, oh, you got an A or you got a star or you or that, whatever, they associate that with a specific level that they have to keep doing to be able to get positive regard. As a parent or as an educator, we don't want to necessarily pin it on those types of external indicators of success. We want to focus in on hard work and keep trying at that. And wow, I loved how you picked out those yellow objects, and I loved how you put together all of those different circles and stuff like that. Oh, wow, aren't you paying attention for such a long period of time? And wow, you're playing with your friends so nicely, and you shared, and all of these different ways of describing the behavior and praising the hard work and the effort and not tying it to a specific achievement level. That's what goes into self-esteem development and the child internalizing what really is valued in their world. Also praising social communication and give and take in a social environment. So listening, following directions. If your child is one of those children who needs to move all the time and needs a lot of activity, giving them praise for, wow, wasn't it great that you sat there for 10 seconds while we did that? Now let's get up and move around. Being able to follow directions and show your child that you are recognizing their ability to follow directions. And then there's child-directed play that we need to put in their life on a day-to-day basis. This is obviously stuff that you would do at home, but it's also something that's very much a part of the curriculum at children's school, to have opportunities built into the day that don't involve structure, that just allow the child to lead in their area of interest. That is one of the main thrusts behind the Montessori model of education, is to allow the child to develop curiosity and to develop their level of interest, and for the adult in the environment to follow the child's lead and not to guide it and say, oh, why don't you pick this object or this object, but to say, oh, wow, I noticed that you picked that object. That's cool. Let me add one to that. Follow your child's pace. Give them time. Try to avoid competition in those moments. The role of the adult in child-directed play is to let the child direct all of these different opportunities for movement so that they are learning to feel curious and learning to build on their previous play and adding to it and noticing what the adults and the other kids in their environment are responding to. So trying to stay away from focusing on this is the way to interact with this object or this game, and letting the child to learn how to play and learn the different rules based on what attention they get from their peers, based on the smiles that they get from the people around them. You as the adult modeling cooperation by doing what your child asks. So letting your child lead it and you doing it and showing your cooperation shows to the child that that's what you value, and then builds that sense of sharing and cooperation into your children as well. So rather than asking questions of, why did you pick that toy? Saying something like, wow, I love, I noticed that you picked that toy. Isn't that an interesting toy to pick? Really trying to make open-ended comments and trying to garner feedback from your child just by showing interest as opposed to asking questions. So just be present, enjoy it, and actually enjoy that opportunity where you don't need to lead. There are so many other avenues of life where as a parent, you're the one that needs to lead. Just leave it open-ended, let your child lead the activity, be present, and have fun with it. I often get questions, is there one type of play that's better than other types of play? The only thing that's better is building into your day-to-day life as many opportunities for play as possible. So there's no right or wrong way to play. Children need both academic-based play, non-directive play. Let them engage in all these different activities. Let them have different regulation, some that's movement-based, some that's more sitting-based, some that's intersecting with different sounds and objects and colors and all these different pieces. So being able to build into their opportunities for everyday activities that stimulate the nervous system, activities that calm the nervous system, activities that are based on peer interaction, activities that are based on individual activities. So I'm going to take a chance to breathe there. Any questions so far from folks? All right, so continuing on, the two best skills that you as a parent can employ so that if you want to become a, quote, play therapist, this is what I spent 10 years of graduate school education learning in my play therapy seminars, is I learned to let the child take the lead and I learned to be consistent. Those are the two primary skills of a good play therapist. And when you're playing with your child, if you can let your child take the lead, and if you can learn just to be consistent in terms of focusing on your child, really spending that time on a consistent basis and showing your child that play is important to you. So you're going to put aside your cell phone, you're going to put aside answering emails, and you're going to be consistent by having time just to be there with your child. Those two skills are the primary skills that research has shown leads to change when a child goes for play therapy to a person like me. But you don't need to bring them to a person like me. Just by learning to be consistent and having those consistent play periods built in and learning to let your child take the lead and not be directive. It's so hard for us as adults to not naturally be directive. When you can take a breath back and just let your child be directive, you're being an incredibly effective play therapist. The different skills you can use at home, praise. And so when we talk about praising kids, what you want to do is be descriptive as possible. And so rather than just saying, wow, you did such a great job, that's obviously lovely words, but what kids learn is that they begin to discount what adults are saying around them when they feel that it's just, sort of the same statements that they're making over and over again. So, oh, what a good boy you are. Wow, what a great job you did. Those are all lovely statements, but what you really want to do is you want to focus on picking up specific indicators of what your child is doing and really using those specific descriptors. That shows your child that you're really paying attention. So, wow, I love that you picked up the blue crayon and that you used the blue over here and you used the red over here. And I love the way that you turned the crayon around in this really cool way and it made this really fun shape. That is really hard work. When you get really specific like that, that triggers the receptors in the child's what's called the temporal lobe. It's the part of the brain that processes language, auditory information coming in, and it says, wow, this adult in my world is paying attention to me because they really noticed what I am intersecting with. And they noticed that I really did pick this blue crayon for a purpose, and I picked this other thing for another purpose. And when you really get specific, that type of praise sinks in, and it's what gives kids the sense that you really are there with them. Just reflecting back what your child is saying. So repeating or paraphrasing what your child says. When your child is using language, by paraphrasing it back, again, it shows them that you're there with them, that you're listening to them, and it helps them to then process language as well. Show them that you're having fun, big smile on your face, getting down on their level, really spending time getting your hands in the dirt and building something with them. Show them that you can have fun too. And then just do what they do. Follow them. Don't lead, just follow. Play what they're playing, even if it seems really weird and bizarre to you. You don't know why they're doing it. The understanding is going to come by letting them explore it. Just play what they're playing and go with them, and let your own need to control go by the wayside for a few minutes. Things to try to avoid or minimize during play. Try not to get specific in your questions, or why are you doing that? Kids interpret that as being critical, even if you're not being critical. Try to avoid as many questions, present things in an open-ended way, commenting, paraphrasing, trying to avoid commands, trying to avoid criticism, trying to avoid the urge to correct and teach while they're doing this open-minded play. And so what's important is, keep in mind that these are great skills to use with kids from time to time, but it helps the kids, it helps kids to have some playtime every day that's free of pressure, learning to perform. Just having open-ended time. Play is time spent without purpose. One of my favorites, Brene Brown. If you don't know her, I know I've probably discussed her over the last couple years when we've done presentations together. Brene Brown does great podcasts. She's written a lot of great stuff. She did this great podcast on play, and she commented about play is time spent without purpose. If you can find time without purpose, you're giving yourself a gift, you're giving your kids a gift as well. Okay, so we're wrapping up here. A few things, and I'll send this out, as I said. We'll make sure that Maureen and team sends this out to everybody. But 3 more slides on specific areas that you can do as a parent that are really powerful ways of helping your kids build different skills in. One of the things you want to be trying to work into their world are opportunities for labeling emotions. And so one of the games that you might want to put into play with your kids is doing feeling charades of like, I'm going to think of a feeling and I'm going to act it out for you. And obviously you want to act it out in a really melodramatic way, but you want to get your children really good at identifying, oh, you're acting out bravery, or you're acting out being shy, or you're acting out being scared. You want them to start developing a language of feelings. There's a guy I want to put on your radar as well. I did mention him in the previous presentation, but his name is Mark Brackett. He's from Yale. He's done a lot of research in terms of children's brain development through identification of feelings. And he has a saying of what he says, name it to tame it. And when we're trying to help kids to be able to manage their emotions and to be more resilient, we want them to feel control over their emotions. And by helping kids to be able to identify what I'm feeling, to identify what they're feeling, and to be able to name their feelings is the most powerful way that they can start gaining mastery over their feelings and develop grit and resilience. And so by playing feeling charades, and if you want to make it even a little bit more, a little bit more structured and concrete, there is a game that you can order, a set of cards called Feelings Cards, and you just play it like, pick a card, any card, and the kid has to pick a card, and it's got a feeling on there, and they have to act it out, or later on when they're a little bit older, they have to write a sentence with it or something like that. But what you want to do is just get them to be identifying what they're feeling, identifying what you're feeling. The more you can work that in, it starts to give them the language by which they intersect best with the world. Other activity suggestions: imaginative toys without set rules that encourage creativity and free play. So here are some various ones. You'll see all of these around the children's school. You'll also see it, I'm sure, in most of your homes, but these are all different great open-ended toys that you don't have to structure anything, just have them available. When it's free to play time, just say, pick out one of our open-ended fun activities and just go build something, go do something with it. Just have time that's not scheduled as stuff that they can intersect with, and let them create something from it. And in the corner here is a great website, www.learning, what is it? I'm blocked by my learningforkids.net, play activities by age. So this is a great website to go to with some great ideas. And then various board games that start to build in that sense of rules, give and take, sharing, all of these different things, but are great games that kids seem to love, to be able to help them to begin to tolerate frustration, to be able to, it's not my turn, it's your turn, to understand some of the rules involved in games. So here's a few that we find are really fun. And as I said, there's the general charades, and then there's also feeling charades that you can get as well. And some final activity suggestions, some empathy building, community focused projects that you can do as you look towards your summer. We obviously want kids to get out and just play and run around and intersect with their peers in an outdoor setting that is just much safer and is not going to be putting anybody at risk. But there are all these different fun things that you can do that are really good ways of building empathy as well. So doing stuff for your neighbors, writing thank you notes to postal workers, decorating hearts and flowers to put into windows. All of these are different great ideas. And obviously digging in a garden is one of the best ways. And so you tap that into playing with your neighbors or doing something fun for one of your neighbors, great activities that build empathy and community focus. So finally, a word of reassurance about the last year and a half. Even though this is unusual, most kids will come out of this fine because we're biologically wired to adapt. If we weren't, we would have gone extinct like the dinosaurs. We wouldn't be able to survive. Our environment is constantly changing. Excellent pediatrician, early child development expert, Dr. Jack Shonkoff, put this together, but it basically encapsulates everything that I've been saying over the last many months. Kids are going to be fine, especially if we take care of ourselves. If we're fine, our kids are going to model that. They're going to be fine, and they're going to move through this. And it's going to actually probably wire them to be one of the most resilient generations that has been raised in the last 100 years. They've had built into their lives all these opportunities to have to adapt and shift and think flexibly. There's no doubt that they're going to be okay as long as we model that for them. So that's what I got. But let's go back to this. Anybody have any questions?
Hey, Chris.
Hello, Danny. How are you?
Good. It's good to see you. I had a question. I wrote it in the chat about, so open-ended play works great between siblings of different ages. But what do you think about, attempting kind of more academic or really parent-led play with siblings of different ages, if that's, worthwhile, or if, could you speak to that a little bit?
I absolutely think it's worthwhile, because what that begins to engender in kids is the idea that when they're in a group with other kids, that everybody doesn't learn at the same pace. Everybody's not learning the exact same thing. It begins to give, the older child the opportunity to maybe show something to the younger child as well. But one of the things that you always want to be building in, whether it's same age kids or a child who's 7 and a child who's 5, is the opportunity that you got to share the stage. And so when when you might be working with the 5-year-old, the 7-year-old has to learn that self-control to be able to stop and wait and can't have mom's attention. So I do think those types of structured learning opportunities are great for kids of multiple ages.
Thanks.
Any other questions folks have?
Chris, I know our time is limited. I wonder if you could say a few words about children that struggle with social entering play, particularly for the younger children, the 3s and 4s.
Sure. And that's the beauty of childhood is that, if you look at any child, there's going to be things that they come to naturally that they're really strong at and things that they might not come to as naturally. And so my bet is that those children that are struggling with how do you enter into a situation, they might be the kids who are grasping number skills super quickly or other different types of skills that demonstrate their skill set. And so as the adults in their environment, noticing the areas that they are stronger in and really descriptively pointing that out is important so that they feel good about themselves, but they obviously need to learn how to navigate that. And so part of it is a little bit more on the structured, teaching them the rules of what do you do when you are coming into a situation where there are other people. And so really breaking it down into when you come into a room where there's 3 other people there or 5 other people there, sometimes you need to just take about, 10 seconds just to take a few deep breaths and look around and see who the people are and notice what they're doing. Notice which kids might be doing something together. And if there is something that they, if there's something that's an activity there that they might want to be a part of, they might not feel comfortable going up right at first, but how about if when we come into the room, we just stop and we look around and then we look at something that we might want to go up and play with and just go up and start playing with it by yourself and see if there's another kid that might come over and join you. And then maybe what I'll do is as your mom is I'll come in and maybe I'll start a conversation with you and we can start to add another child in. And so a lot of times it's really about giving them the rules for entering into a situation so that they can start to learn that in their, their structure of how to approach a new situation, and then giving them the open-ended opportunity that when they come into a new situation that they don't immediately need to engage, they should just observe. They should just take a time to breathe and figure out what's going on around them, and then maybe go find something that might be more individual that another child that might then come up and join them on. And then over time, what you can do is, if there is a child in the neighborhood that is a child that, that you can identify as a good, kind of a peer that might be comfortable for them to start building one-to-one skills with, to build in a little bit of structured play that the adults might be guiding it a little bit more. And then the goal is for the adult to start backing away and letting the kids do a little bit more of that. Or in a classroom situation to be able to, for the teachers to notice which kids have more comfortable, immediate social engagement things and to start, putting together dyads with one child who's a good leader of play and one child that might be a good follower of play so that they can start to play off of each other in that way a little bit more.
Well, thank you, Chris. Perhaps the next year, one of our first workshops will be on temperament, children and different temperaments, and that will be a longer discussion. But we appreciate you spending time with us this morning, and to all of our families who have joined. Please know that Chris has been gracious enough that we have recorded. We will send along the information to you. And as I'm going to echo what Chris shared at the beginning of our workshop, the children have not missed a beat in terms of joy and social play at the children's school. We are looking forward to the closing weeks. We're looking forward to our summer program and seeing you all at the end of the year events. So many thanks for joining us this morning. And Chris, many thanks for offering this workshop.
Absolutely. It's great to see everybody, and I look forward to seeing everybody in person, hopefully next year.
Here for sure. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Bye.